It's time for Saturday Free Stuff. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my daily walk. Saturday Free Stuff. End of week 7, I believe. As you know, if you've been listening, Saturdays are different. We don't follow a format yet. We may fall into a format other than introducing it as Saturday Free Stuff. But I wanted to do this right now. Forgive me for being a little out of breath. I'm walking on an incline, and looks like I'll be on this incline for a while. But I wanted to record this right now because if you recall, if you listened to which one? Hope for Hollywood Part 1. You will recall, and if you haven't listened, then you won't recall. This will be your first time hearing it. But I mentioned during that recording that I was going to have coffee today. This is that same day that I recorded Hope for Hollywood Part 1. I had lost my phone several months ago. Went a couple months without a phone, without a real phone. I had lost 2 years worth of contacts, and after replacing the phone, periodically I will get texts from people that are just numbers because their names are no longer in my phone. I won't know who it is. I'll respond saying, blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, who is this? And they'll tell me who it is. And so I got one from someone saying, hey, we haven't hung out for a while. We're overdue. Why don't we schedule something, put something on the calendar? And it was just a number. No name associated with it. And in this particular instance, the thought struck me, why don't I just surprise myself? There are a few true surprises in life. Here's an opportunity for one. I should actually analyze that and make that a topic. There are a few true surprises in life. Is that true? Actually, it's not true. There's tons of surprises, but there are some things that we have control over where we can get the information. For example, gender of a child. Here I'm going on a tangent. Fully knowledgeable that I'm going on a tangent. I'll get back to the subject, but the gender of your child, you can find out within a couple months of gestation, and they'll ask you, you want to know the gender, and you can say yes or no, and sometimes they just tell you and they don't ask you, and there goes that surprise. So we did that. We were surprised. We decided to be surprised, and that's the phrase that rolled off my tongue. There are a few true surprises in life. Why not? Well, this is that case where I get a text, and it's just a number. Clearly, it's somebody who I like hanging out with, because just the basic context of the initial text. Hey, we're overdue. Okay, this is somebody that I meet with regularly, or that I haven't met with in a while, or I don't know. There's so much going on in my life right now. My first thought is, there's any number of people this could be. I narrowed it down to about 3 possibilities. But I resolved I'm not going to tell them that I don't know who this is. I'm not going to tell them that I'm just going to play it by ear and let it unfold and make it a surprise. I'll say, so responded saying, all right, I'm flexible. Why don't you set the time and day, and I'll meet you somewhere. I'll meet you for coffee. And so today was that day, and I went into the coffee shop a few minutes early. There's only 2 people in there, neither of whom I knew. Got my drink, sat down, clock is ticking. 10 minutes late, 17 minutes late. I'm like, what if the person never shows up? What happened? What if they got in a car accident? What if, I don't know. All kinds of things going through my head. I had eliminated one of the other possibilities. I narrowed it down to 3, and I eliminated one of them, and so I'm thinking it's one of 2 people, I think. And it was neither. It was neither one of the 2 people I had narrowed it down to, and I was looking forward to it. If it was either of those people, I was looking forward to it, very much looking forward to it. But the person that it was a pleasant surprise. It was it was my astrophysicist friend. It was a person I have referred to in this podcast at some point. I'm pretty sure I referred to him in 100 billion nuclear bombs, and that's the title of the episode. If you haven't heard it, I recommend you go listen to it. This guy's one of my sources, one of my reliable sources. So seeing him walk in, big smile on my face, and I didn't tell him. We had a nice long, I don't know, hour and a half walk and talk, and and he said this multiple times. He's like, there's like 12 different directions I want to go with this conversation right now. And as we're wrapping it up, we still stood there and talked for another 10, 15 minutes. And it's just one of those kind of friendships when I don't know what it is. I'm just a science enthusiast. I've done a lot of reading of science and philosophy of science and educating myself. I don't have a formal degree in science at all, and this guy does. He's a PhD. He's working on a dark matter experiment on a government grant at one of the top universities in the world. That if he told me today, there's a 10 to 40% chance that this experiment will yield data that could be on the caliber of a Nobel Prize in physics. Right? This was just the numbers he threw out. It's between 10 and 40% chance I mean, it's not a waste. They're going to be discovering something. He said they will when it happens, when they run all their tests and launch. Basically, it's a balloon launch. Anything with dark matter, you're launching a sensor up into the atmosphere, and it's going to be receiving data like gamma particles blasting through the atmosphere at that elevation or something. I mean, so he said it will set a record for the heaviest payload ever to go up in a balloon experiment. So that's cool. But it could also yield him a Nobel Prize in physics. Anyway, so this guy, he's just a guy like that has the capacity to comprehend information that only a small subset of the human race can grasp. Like, that's the level there. He said there's about 1,000 people on the planet that are versed in the realm, in the study, in the field of study that he's researching. There's like 1,000. He said there's about 20 projects right now around the globe, which totals about 1,000 people involved. That's an exclusive group. That is a small sample of bright minds. And this guy, I just love hanging out with him, and we're able to, I guess my amateur enthusiasm has given me enough of a grasp where I can have an articulate conversation with a person at his level, and I'm able to ask questions that he's able to just spit out answers. It's wonderful. And that was the case. And he's captivated by what I'm working on as well, so I'm able to talk to him. He has signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I'm able to talk to him about what I'm doing. And so it's like we have 2 totally divergent fields of interest or professionally that we're involved with, yet our conversations are just nonstop. And I mean, we could have sat for easily 2 more hours and barely exhausted the the interest we have in what each other's doing. Nice to have friends like that. So it was a very, very pleasant surprise. I just wanted to do this special Saturday free stuff to document it. I'm just honored. I'm honored to be in these people's lives. Like, oh, I might as well tell this story here and now. I could save it for a life lesson, how I met this guy. And I don't know, maybe I've already mentioned it in the past, but let's mention it here, the way I met this guy. A little free life lesson, or free personal history. So, 3 years ago, I was writing a script. I had, had been employed professionally in post-production and producing, but always wanting to tell my own stories, and tell story, not my story, but tell stories that I came up with. And one of the things that you are advised to do, I don't know if it's advice, but one of the strategies, I suppose, that people mention if you are an unknown, you haven't produced anything, you don't have a big resume, your name isn't on everybody's lips. If you're an unknown, that's a huge hurdle to get over breaking into the business. And especially if you want to tell your own stories, if you want to be the one basically calling the shots, or at least outlining what the story is about, whether it's a movie, a TV show, or anything, even a documentary. If you want to be the guy that gets other people moving in a direction on a topic, writing a screenplay is specifically what I'm referring to. One of the couple of the factors you should take into consideration, especially if you're an unknown. Your story should be low budget, because that'll open up a lot more doors potentially if it's a good story. Low budget and high concept. High concept, low budget. That combination. What is high concept? What does that mean? High concept means it's a bit of an ambiguous category, but it's something that is striking, something that's going to get people's attention, something that's has a feel of uniqueness and originality and approachability or relatability. So high concept. Can I think of an example? Jaws in space. That's actually the pitch, I think, of a movie. Jaws in space. It's not low budget, but it's definitely high concept. Jaws in space, that's the pitch for Alien. That's it. Let's just take that monster movie out of the ocean and put it in outer space. So that's high, that would categorize as high concept, I guess. So that's my mind frame. What's low budget? Well, low budget is few locations and few actors. The more actors that have speaking lines, the higher the budget is. So few actors in one location, or in few locations, or it could be a cabin in the woods. Could be. There's a couple. There's one called Buried, I think. I think Ryan Reynolds, I think the entire thing took place in a coffin, like he was buried alive. I recommend that movie. That's a good movie. But that's cheap. It's just one actor in a box. Well, there's the dream that everyone has, Paranormal Activity. It was 2 actors or 3 actors in one house, shot with home before cameras became like the recording device I'm using right now. actually has a 4K, which is broadcast quality. It's a 4K camera in it, and it's broadcast quality in my hand and in my pocket. Well, that's recent technology, so when Paranormal Activity was filmed, the technology hadn't gotten to that place, but that entire film was shot on a home camera, and one location cost a total of like $14,000 and made hundreds of millions of dollars. That's an extreme example, but that's high concept, low budget. So I was writing a story. It was three characters. One's just a voiceover. So 3 characters, 2 actors in one location. It was science fiction. It was in outer space, so it's just this one little capsule. It has like 3 rooms in it, 4 rooms, basically 3 locations in one. Anyway, and initially it was like art house piece. It'll be philosophical, contemplating artificial intelligence and the uniqueness of the human experience, and probing certain philosophical truths, I suppose. And at the very least, well, if it's an art house piece, it's something maybe I can shoot. That was the idea. I want it to be interesting, but cheap enough if I didn't find an investor that I would just get it made myself. But it was science fiction, and when I say science fiction, there's a whole continuum, a whole spectrum of science fiction. There's Star Wars, Star Trek, alien life forms and other planets, fantasy kind of land. And then there's The Martian, or recently Ad Astra. Those types of science fiction films stick closer to the actual science. For example, The Martian, of all the technology exhibited or featured in the movie The Martian, the one with Matt Damon, all of that, most of that is real science. They did have to fudge some things, but one in particular to add the inciting incident, to make the inciting incident, like in The Martian. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but by this time you should have seen it. It's been out for a long time. But in the beginning, there's a storm, a sandstorm, a dust storm, that is portrayed as this is a regular occurring event, but we didn't expect it to happen, and we got to blast off. We got to get off this planet. We can't survive if we stay, and Matt Damon gets left behind. Well, that kind of storm just doesn't happen. What they depicted, it doesn't happen. But that's the creative license in storytelling. But the rest of the film, even the botany, where he's figuring out how to grow plants, potatoes on the surface of Mars, a lot of that, majority of that is real science. So that's kind of the spectrum. There's the fantasy adventure, flying giant ships around the universe at light speed. That's science fiction, because that stuff won't ever happen. Sorry to burst your bubbles. That stuff will never happen. But then there's the other end of the continuum is the science realism. And so I love both. I love all science fiction, just, not all, but I'm a science fiction fan of any number of things along that continuum. But the one I was writing, I wanted to be as accurate as possible. I wanted to have my facts as essentially I wanted to be fact check proof as much as possible. I wanted to be able to articulate the science from a realistic perspective. And so I had written the script, finally got it to a draft that was not embarrassing, that I could send out, and got to a point where I got to find a scientist. I need to find an astrophysicist, somebody that can peer review my screenplay, basically. And there's this one science organization that I respect a lot. I'm like, oh, I'll just send an email and see if they have, even if it's not one of their staffers, maybe they have some amateur science assistants or enthusiasts that they trust that would have the time to entertain proofreading somebody's script. So I just sent a cold email, just found the contact, human resources, whatever, and sent out a cold email, just basically saying what I just said in the email. I'm writing a script, I want it to be peer reviewed, or somebody to tell me what's wrong and fix anything I have incorrect, whatever. And this guy got back to me, and he's like the second lead astrophysicist at this organization, and he personally read it, liked it, and we were friends instantly. So that's it. And that was who I had coffee with today. So I rambled a bit, but that was some Saturday free stuff.